Okay, coming up on our Finding Better podcast, Yosi Kossowsky is joining me, and we're going to talk about rewiring your bullshit meter. We all have one. And you know what? Finding better is a mindset. And we're going to talk about how, not only how to rewire the external, how we accept external bullshit into our heads, but also the stuff that's already in there that's bouncing around, screwing around with our mindsets. Because, one of the greatest fears out there is fear of failure, right? It holds us back. We're going to talk about how three of the most important things in facing your failures and overcoming them is to experiment, experiment, and experiment. Just like in real estate, three most important things are location, location, location. So sit back, enjoy this, share this with folks because we actually do an exercise on me during this episode. All right, here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And our guest today is Yosi Kossowsky, and we're going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about life. We're going to talk about personal growth. And here on the Finding Better podcast, a lot of you know, but I want to say it. It's all about sharing real life experiences and lived experiences of people who have been there and done that and what we're talking about. Because sometimes the best path to success is to follow in the footsteps of others. So, Yossi is a leadership coach, and we're going to talk about his journey, a very, very interesting journey of transitioning from a successful engineer where having the right answers was always the key to success. And then he transitioned into becoming a people manager and a people leader, which required an entirely different set of skills of self-awareness, building trust, the people stuff, managing emotions, and learning how to communicate with intention. And we're going to talk about that shift that he made. We're also going to talk about personal growth and he's going to share specific techniques about how to develop self-awareness and shift mindset patterns from not so healthy to healthy mind shift patterns and staying grounded through all the pressure, all the change, all the noise that we go through these days. And these are lessons that anyone can use, all of us can use to navigate our career goals. And if you're dealing with leadership challenges, applies here too. Yossi, thank you for joining me on Finding Better. Welcome.
Thank you, John. I'm really happy to be here and excited to be talking with you today.
Yeah, yeah. Well, me too. Me too. You know, um, uh, I'm really I don't even know where to start. So you are a leadership coach. But you've had so many experiences in high tech and in different things that you've done in a varied career. Um, why don't we just talk about a little bit about you and why you're so passionate about helping other people find their way?
So, absolutely. As I started my journey to more self-awareness, right? So as we were talking about before we started the show, I was an engineer and I really kind of understood how to do that, how to take information that I would read or see other people do, apply it. And one of the great things about engineering, computers, all of that is pretty much instant gratification. You do something, you see if it works right away. And so you
Hmm.
kind of know. And then as I started taking on more responsibilities, supporting other people, supporting other engineers, what I started finding out was knowledge wasn't enough. Reading books about leadership, about how to be a good listener, how to have patience, how to support people, how to be empathetic, how to communicate effectively. The what knowledge did not translate into the how to knowledge, and I found that was new. That was all new. Like, what do you do when what you know doesn't turn out to be how you apply it?
Yeah, and the instant gratification part of it kind of went the way of the dodo bird.
out the window, right? Because
Yep. Been there,
unlike
done that.
computers, right? Like unlike computers that have an on and off button, people do not. So
Yeah, that's right. And people don't have a happy button either, right? You
no,
can-
or Control Alt Delete, right? You can't
Yeah,
reboot.
that's right.
So um, so it was a whole new world. And as I started trying to get to the answers that I was missing, it led me to study things like neuroscience and emotional wellness therapy, and helped me really understand things that I had never even dreamed of understanding. Our where do our belief systems come from? How do those play a role in how we perceive the world and understand the world? Um, why we get triggered, where the triggers are coming from, how do we become more aware of them and therefore do something about them?
And there's
Uh,
no single answer,
no single
right?
answer,
There's no
right?
single answer.
But what there is methodologies
Sure.
that people can apply to find this out about themselves. And that was for me, thankfully, in my systematic thinking. At least there's methods, not one, there's many, but there are methods that people can start to work on to get that deeper awareness of themselves. I won't say it's the easiest trek,
Oh my
and
God.
it's
Yeah,
still do
sometimes it takes a
it's
lifetime.
doable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
But I tell people, we're going to talk about some of the things that you some of the techniques and some of the tools that you use. But, I always tell people, you got to do the work. You got to do the work. I mean, Yossi and I can sit here telling you all of the best of our lives, but you got to do the work. And I also wanted to share one thing that you were talking about is that, in your world as an engineer, right? In the world of computers, what's a single common denominator of computers is on and off, black and white, ones and
Yep.
zeros, right? And so when you go from engineering and these types of technical positions, you're going from a black and white world into a world of people, which is not gray, it's in color, right? I mean, you're literally making a transition, like kind of like the Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy opens the door from the black and white in Kansas and opens into the world of the Wizard of Oz, and everything turns into color. I mean, that is the transition that yes, he's talking about, and it can be tough. And this is something that's really, really great if you're in your career as a technical person thinking about a management role. Good to know. Good to
Yeah.
know.
And it's the other part about it is, in a sense, the way technology works is mapped out. It kind of has to follow a flow, but people don't.
That's right.
People, you
Yeah,
know,
that's right.
and we see it in the world we live in, right? Everyone's got different beliefs, different opinions, different values. We dress differently, we talk differently, we react differently, and it's chaos. And so it's not, for me, it has not really been about trying to make sanity out of the chaos. It is about
Right.
making peace with chaos.
There you go. There you go. Right. I talk a lot about the world that we live in and all the noise. And with the rise of technology, I mean, we've seen the charts. As technology has risen, so too has mental illness and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, poor choice of words. And so, but anyway, just unintended consequences that have happened, and the noise. I mean, there's just noise everywhere. So, coming to peace is a big, big deal, right?
Yeah. Yep. And no
Yeah.
one's going to be able to do it for you. That's the other thing, that the path to getting to where somebody wants to go, very much like what I heard you say, John, is you have to do the work. And what's funny about doing the work is most of us understand this in some part of our lives. We brush our teeth every day, because if we don't, then they rot, right? We get dressed every day. there are so many things that we have learned that we have to do the work to get the results. And when we want to show up differently, respond differently, make different choices, we've got to do the work too.
And here's a really cool part about that, and what you just talked about, Yessie, is that the more you do it, the more you build that muscle, the easier it gets, right? And eventually, I really don't have to think that much when I'm brushing my teeth. I mean, I don't, I mean, right? But when I was a kid learning how to brush my teeth, I mean, it was a pain in the ass. But, and so it's the same thing, folks. I mean, we're sharing in this episode a bunch of stuff, and it's up to you to do the work. But the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. The more you practice, it's like building a muscle, right?
It is literally like building a muscle. And so
Perfect.
anybody who's done sport, running, tennis, baseball,
Right.
basketball, right? The more you practice, the better you get, the stronger you get. It's the same with our emotional muscles.
Yes. Yes, that is a wonderful, wonderful metaphor because it's true. It's true. I mean, we're focused on, when we're dealing with athletics, we're focused on our physical self. But the same thing holds true with our emotional self and our mental self. And yeah, you have to do the work. But the cool thing is that you're here and we're sharing with you things you can do. And we want to give you as much inspiration and encouragement as possible that'll help you drive through it.
Absolutely.
So help me with this. Help me with this. Riddle me this, Yessie. So, how do you inspire people, you know, to keep going? Because, folks are going to get some ideas, from this experience they're having with us. I mean, I always say if you just get one great idea out of any experience, it was worth it, right? So they're going to get really great ideas and they're going to go and they're going to implement it. And then life is going to get in the way,
Yeah.
right? As it always does. So, do you have something that you or a way to that you encourage and inspire your folks to keep going?
It sounds really similar to the idea you've already started to present, John, which
Okay.
is that it's not binary. Being human is not binary. And there's a shift we can make between I did it right or I did it wrong to everything is an experiment. And as long as I'm learning something from that experience, then it was a successful experiment. I might learn what not to do, and I might learn what to do more of. I might learn pieces of it. The goal is not to get it right, whatever that is, because who knows what that is. What the goal is when I'm working with somebody is experiment, experiment, experiment. Part two is if someone is coming to coaching, it usually means they want to be doing something different than they're doing today.
Hmm.
That means change. Now, if I already knew how to change, I wouldn't need coaching. So,
Right.
inherently, to do something that I haven't been doing before means it's new, means it's unknown, which means that to try it is going to have to be something unexperienced before, new. We can look at that again as I did it right or wrong. And if we hang on to that mindset, it is very disempowering. If we can adopt the mindset that as I'm trying something I haven't done before, even if it's just like part of what you haven't done before, and you can treat it like an experiment, then the question isn't, did I get it right or wrong? It's what did I learn? And
Yeah.
that's the part that I have found when people are willing to kind of shift there, that's a very empowering place to be because then
That
it's all
is
about the learning.
that is a huge mind shift, mindset shift. Sorry, folks.
You know,
That's
mindset shift.
right.
Absolutely.
That's huge, and because people are fearful of failure. And even though you can tell them until your eyes turn purple that you know your greatest lessons come from your failures, right? Failure is a wonderful teacher. Pain is a wonderful teacher because you don't forget those lessons, right? And so
Yeah.
if we're looking at success or failure as an experiment, if you're successful, that was an experiment. And folks have heard about Thomas Edison that he failed 1,000 different times to invent the light bulb or the filament. And when a reporter came to him and says, "How can you handle that? You failed 1,000 times." He came back and said, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. I just figured out 1,000 ways a filament didn't work." Right? And so that was the experimentation part of it. And so if we can get into that mind shift that says we're gonna learn something, right? I mean, if we're successful, we'll learn something. If we're not successful, we're gonna learn something, right? We're gonna learn
Yeah.
what not to do again.
Yeah.
And get
Absolutely.
back on your damn horse and start riding. Let's go, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So as you're dealing with people, um, there's I think one of the things, and this may not be a fair question, but I think it actually is, because of all the work that you've done. But there's a lot of people who fear people. There's a lot of people who are lonely, and and we're talking about leadership. And you stepped
Yeah.
out of your comfort zone of your rights and wrongs, your bits and bytes, your ones and zeros,
Right.
right? Your very binary world into a world of color. And I imagine there's a lot of people out there who are kind of looking at that similar kind of challenge and going, okay, well, what can I do? What can I do to be able to share my humanity, to be able to get out there um, and be and get out of my loneliness.
So I'm going to be really
Cool.
radical, I think, which
Okay.
is
Okay.
talk to somebody, like really talk to somebody the way we're talking now. It doesn't have to be in person, though that's awesome, but it's not an asynchronous conversation. It's a synchronous conversation. And there is this, and I'm not nearly enough of a neuroscience um, buff to understand why this is. And my experience has shown this. Thoughts in our head can be anything. They can be unrealistic, they can be larger than life, they can be anything.
They can
And
be helpful, they can be damaging, right?
well, yes, but what they're not while they're in our head is solidified. When we
Right.
speak something out, it's like, John, have you ever had a really vivid dream?
Yeah.
Have you ever tried to tell somebody your vivid dream?
Yeah.
What happens when you go from it being in your head to trying to tell somebody the dream?
When it gets out there. It's
Well,
it
have you ever
uh-huh.
found, how have you found the experience of taking the dream and actually telling it to somebody?
I found it pretty empowering.
Okay, cool.
For me, I found it empowering because I was able, a lot of times I don't want to tell people about my dreams. But when I do, and this is really interesting what you're saying, I find myself wanting to do something about it, right?
Awesome.
I
Yeah.
have, I used to have this, I'll just say, I used to have this recurring dream of me being in a bar of all places. I don't even drink. But this big guy coming up to me and grabbing me and just lifting me up against the wall. And I can't do anything. I am just helpless. And he's just laughing in my face. This would have, I'd have this dream all the time. And then
Wow.
I told my wife about it, and I said, I want to do something about it. So I started learning karate. That was 30 years ago. I'm a fifth degree black belt. And I haven't had
Wow.
that dream ever since. So,
So
I don't
that's
know.
amazing. And it follows the pattern that I see, which is when it's in our head, it can be scary, it can be overwhelming, it can be overpowering. But what it doesn't necessarily do is take on a set of solidity. When we speak it out, a whole bunch of different things can happen. One is it can be empowering. The second is we can recognize the holes in the ideas that we've been carrying around in our thoughts, that once we put them out there, are not as scary, are not as overwhelming, or we realize that the thoughts that I've been having don't really make so much sense. And I don't,
Yeah,
again, know that the science fully behind it. And I have seen this hundreds, literally hundreds of times, that when I ask people to speak out the thought in their head, things change. You can become more empowering.
interesting.
You can
Interesting.
become less scared. You can become more directed. Whatever it is, it goes from almost a purely irrational emotional experience to something you can do something with,
Well,
kind of like you said.
I kind of giggled while you were talking because I remember a dream that I told my wife about. And well, whether this was a healthy response or not, she says, "Well, that's kind of stupid, isn't it?" And I just kind of looked at her and I said, "What?" She goes, "Well, that doesn't make sense. So why are you stressing out about that?" And we both laughed about it, and I never had that dream again. You
Right.
know?
Yep. And so
Yeah.
the leaving the thoughts in our head, especially the ones of I'm not good enough, I don't know, it's too scary, I can't do it, all of those, as long as they stay in our head, they have a controlling factor, but they're not solidified enough to do something with. When we share them with somebody else, they get solid. And then, like your wife, and we can say it in many ways, and yet the point is still there, which is we can almost like do something with it. We can now choose
Yeah.
to act on it, to ignore it, to recognize, you know, that's kind of ridiculous. Um, so that's a really a big thing, is getting the thoughts out of your head, talking to somebody. And even though now you can talk to AI and AI will talk back to you, I don't know. I haven't tried. I don't know if it's really the same thing as talking to another human who can look you in the eye, even over video, and give you facial expression, to it all. Uh, so that's what I
Yeah.
recommend. It's really what I
Yeah.
recommend.
Yeah. We'll talk about the AI part of it because um I'm a believer that AI is ones and zeros and people are color.
Okay.
And I believe, I mean, AI will replace a lot of things, right? I mean,
Mhm.
AI can create art. AI can make music. But the one thing, and this is my own personal belief, uh, and it's not fact because it hasn't the era of AI hasn't gotten to uh, where we're talking about. But I believe that the one thing AI will never be able to do is human connection, real human connection, love. Um, and if it can, I mean, it can emulate it,
Right.
but I believe there's going to come a time when, uh, the pendulum is going to start swinging back from the technology world that we're living in to a renaissance of heart. And I'm already starting to see that. I'm already starting to
Okay.
see that, which is really, really cool. But I may be completely wrong. You know, I mean, who knows? We may end
Uh,
up being replaced by robots, and who knows what's going to
Well,
happen.
they're not mutually exclusive. What I'm hearing you say about human connection and heart and being replaced by robots, both can be true and not at all be a problem of meaning of disagreement in the sense that I don't I don't know if we have any way to understand what a non-biological being
Right.
would experience because we have enough of a challenge understanding ourselves and what we are experiencing, and we understand that essentially we share DNA, we're pretty much all the same body structure and all of that, and yet we don't understand each other, let alone trying to understand something that's not human.
Right. Right. That's right. And
Yep.
there was a movie that came out years ago called Her,
Yep.
and you saw the movie, but
Yeah.
it was about this guy who had this relationship with a voice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was an AI, and this AI started to learn, and it started to learn, hey, you know, maybe I can learn to like someone other than you. And then, which drove him crazy, right? And it's just, but who knows where it's going? But I am bullish on humanity.
Okay.
The other thing I just wanted to mention, going back to what we were talking about with dreams
Yeah.
and self-talk. Just yesterday, I was given a shame on you moment, and I was talking with a very, very dear friend of mine. And during our conversation, we were talking about a lot of things, and I was just kind of getting overwhelmed. And I said, you know what, Kim, I'm not always the sharpest knife in the drawer. And when the time I had that stuck in my head, it's still stuck in my head, right?
Yeah.
And how disempowering is that? And but still, it is something that is. I'm sorry if you can hear that. If it's something that during our conversation, she said, "Okay, let's rewind this tape for a second," right? She says, let's talk about you not being the sharpest knife in the drawer. And she came back and she said, look, one, two, three, four, five. And she said, stop saying that, you know? And so that's an example I just wanted to share that happened just yesterday. And
Yeah.
these thoughts that are just bouncing inside my head and bouncing inside of all of our heads of for whatever reason, I might have picked that up from my dad. Um, and I picked up a lot of a lot of baggage from my dad, but that's okay, right?
Yeah.
That awareness part of it is hugely important, right?
Yeah. And you talk about the self-talk, and it is amazing if we could just step out for a second and observe ourselves and what we say, and then it's
No
like be
kidding.
curious, like, why are you saying that? Especially that the putting down stuff.
Yeah.
And I always ask people when they say something like that, like, what benefit are you getting by saying that? What benefit do you get, or did you get before yesterday, or when you were in that situation by saying that?
None.
No,
You could call it
I'm going
maybe
to
you can
challenge you, John. I'm
maybe
going
you
to
can call.
challenge you.
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
going to challenge you.
Okay. So
Okay.
one thing just before you do that, one thing, self-deprecating humor. Um, I uh, I don't know.
Okay. So here's the theory. The
Hmm.
theory is we only do things that we get a benefit from, even if the benefit is bizarre. Okay. We only do things that we get a benefit from, even if the benefit is bizarre, hurtful to ourselves, etc. So, are you willing to explore this a little bit?
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
As long as this is something that my audience can learn from.
Yeah, I think so. Or
Okay. Oh God,
a
here we
live
go,
role play.
folks. Oh
Okay.
boy. Okay.
All right. So, what would you not be able to think or feel about yourself if you can no longer be self-deprecating?
What would I say that again?
What would you no longer be able to think or feel about yourself if you can no longer be self-deprecating?
Um, that I'm less than.
If you
You know,
couldn't be self-deprecating, you would
if I
feel more
couldn't, if I couldn't be self-deprecating, it would probably be probably be healthier for me.
absolutely.
Um,
And what would you lose at the same time? Even though that would be healthier,
what would I lose?
what would you lose?
Perhaps some humility,
Okay.
because sometimes when I do that, and I want people to laugh, I joke about myself, and kind of keeps me humble.
So that's a pretty powerful hook. If you have in some way connected self-deprecation with the idea of it has the benefit of keeping you humble, then that behavior, which also probably drives other mindsets and maybe become part of what the brand that you sell, because people say, oh, yeah, John, self-deprecating guy, doesn't think so great highly of himself. All to
Oh,
keep
bummer.
you, all to keep yourself feeling that that's the way to keep yourself humble. To me, that's a pretty powerful hook. But is it
Yeah.
the hook you want?
No. No.
So
Clearly.
that good choice. Okay. From my perspective, good choice. Right. So here's the question. What other positive minded mind talk could you have that keeps you humble, but that also keeps you healthy?
So throwing the self-deprecating humor into the trash can.
Yep.
And
And then what would you replace it with?
what would I replace it with? Um, uh, what would I replace it with? Um, Authenticity comes to mind.
Okay.
But you know, I come back to humor.
Sure.
Um, but what would I replace it with? I don't know. I don't know, and I don't want to have too much silence, too much
You're
of a
right. Okay.
pause.
Yeah, no problem.
But
So this is the work for me, John, which is we have gotten as humans, we have these patterns and we can shape them however we want. But if we were to stand outside of ourselves, kind of like it sounds like what happened yesterday, where this person says to you, what are you saying? Why are you saying these things about yourself? And while
right.
you feel, okay, that's maybe going to keep me humble, you know that thought. You know that thought. Maybe you know your reasoning behind it, but nobody else can read your thoughts or your mind. They don't know the reasoning. All they get is to observe your behaviors and what you're doing and try to make sense of it. And
Mm,
if you were to hear somebody else putting themselves down, what would what might be your impression of them?
knock it off.
Okay. Would it be a
I
positive
thought
impression?
it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be. It would be a stop. Stop. You know, which is really interesting. There's something deeper I just realized in the sharpest knife
Okay.
in the drawer.
Yeah. You like
And
knives.
yeah, and yeah, exactly. Well, I do like samurai swords and all that kind of stuff, but um, to a certain extent, I really do believe I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Growing up. I'm one of those people. It's funny because I would walk into a classroom and then everybody would look at me and say, "Oh my God, there goes the curve." At the end of the semester, everybody would going, "Hey Suzuki, thanks for being in our class." I'm one I'm one of those guys that needs to read something 3 or 4 times in order to get to a point of saying, "Okay, it's trying to say something to me." Where there's a lot of people like you, right, who can read something and get it the first time. And so, I've always grown. I I surrounded myself with unbelievably brilliant people and super super smart people, and I place myself there, even though it is a little bit intimidating sometimes. But there is that belief that is stuck in my head that says,
Yeah.
I'm not good enough.
Right. You
You
know,
know,
it's funny that you say about me that your impression of me is what it is. And on a way, I'm like humbled that you have that impression of me, because that is not my experience of myself. I grew up with tremendous learning disabilities, relatively being ostracized by the other kids because I couldn't do the things that they could do. I didn't learn how to read until fourth grade, and no one, teachers didn't know how to teach me. And I grew up um, with undiagnosed dyslexia and other learning disabilities, and everyone kind of thought I was stupid, and I certainly thought I was broken. And I am grateful for my journey and the emotional wellness work that helped me learn how to make sense and come to terms with my past. And I think that it's given me that insight when I hear it from other people. John, I think you're completely normal, man. It takes me
well,
many
thank you.
times to understand something, to get it, to make sense of it. And I am one of these people that not only needs to hear it a couple of times, I need to walk away and think about it and let it like kind of like take shape, or like bread rising in my head before it kind of comes together. And now that I've learned that about myself and I accept that about myself, it's no longer a negative or a weakness. This is me. And I let people know when they're like, "Hey, I need an answer from you right away." And I'm like, "I need some time to think about it." Because whatever answer I give you right now is not going to be well thought out. It's not going to be well considered. And I'm just going to come back to you tomorrow and say, "Oh, change my mind." Not because I changed my mind, but because what you're getting from me now is something that's not been worked through. And this idea of not looking at our quirks, our ways of seeing and making sense of the world as a negative. This is the beauty that is each of us. And if I wanted a carbon copy of myself, I don't know if I could do it yet. But one day I'll probably be able to clone myself. But what excitement would that be? I wouldn't learn anything from the guy who knows the same things I know.
Right?
So that's why I love being on your podcast and others, because how do I learn to know what I don't know without others reflecting, sharing, talking, working something through?
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. And thank you. Thank you for I mean, you gave me a gift. And that gift was, you know, I've always said this. I've always said that no matter who you talk to, every single person you bump into onto the street has something going on that you have no clue about, right? And a lot of people have stuff going on that's way worse than your worst day.
Yeah.
And and so it's for me, that idea that I'm not good enough or that I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Or here's another one. I'm the weak link in the chain,
Right.
right? And again, it goes back to the people who I I can't say I've surrounded, it's not like I waved a magic wand and said, "You shall surround me with your love and friendship," right? I
Right.
mean, they've made the same decision to have me as part of their life, and I'm honored 100% of the time. Um, and so the gift that you gave me was that realization that, you know what, I'm not perfect. And so stop focusing on the bullshit.
Right.
I mean, and I feel like that's what I do. And I feel like that, I feel like when I'm talking to people, that is a really common denominator of what I try to help people out of is stop. You know,
Yep.
stop,
Yeah.
right?
When we started this podcast, right, and your listeners don't know it because the recording that you have here is the recording that we're using. But there was a couple of bloopers before we started, and I love that.
Yeah.
I love that that's humanity. That one of the things that I really learned and truly believe is there's no concept of perfect. There's no concept of getting it right. There's my goals or my outcomes. How close did I get? But again, what did I learn? Because it's a John Lennon song, and I'm not really sure what he meant when he said this line. Is it'll all be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not the end. So it's not meant to be all right, but in the end, it'll all be all right, whatever that means.
Yeah. Okay. Good. 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 Well, that whole idea of I've been talking about self-awareness. I've been talking about mindset patterns. I've been talking about staying grounded, and you just blew me out of the water. And
Thanks.
you just basically through just having and folks, you know that I hope that didn't bore you. For me, it was fascinating, and I'll tell you, if I had listened to Yessi having this conversation with you or somebody else, having that realization of all the things that I believe and me not practicing it myself,
Yeah.
right? And it's just I will. And I asked you the question a little bit earlier, Yessi. How do you keep people motivated? This was a bit of a shocker, and you said it, and you took me through this short journey in a way that I'd never gone through it before, and that's why it was so powerful and memorable, and it will stick. Um, and so thank you,
Yeah, you're
thank
welcome.
you.
And thank you for being willing. That's the thing about these whole experiences is the willingness on both sides.
I imagine that a big part of it is being willing to be vulnerable,
Huge,
right?
huge. Yep.
And that's another thing. And maybe we can end all that on this because it is so, we live in a world of social media where I don't know what percent of that stuff that's out there is real or fake, but a huge percentage of it, right? Of people, I've heard that people have gone out and rented Lamborghinis to make it look like they own a Lamborghini, and you know, and they're not, they're faking it, and yet all this input and all this bad information is or just being bombarded by it, and a lot of it is saying, "Hey, you're not like me. You're a loser. You're a loser. You're a loser. You're a loser." Or if you don't buy my product, you're not going to be happy, right? So we're inundated with all this messaging of inadequacy.
100%. And I think you said it earlier in one of the comments about the mental health impact of what we have today.
Hmm.
And I agree 100%, which is it if we are trying to take what we see and make a story out of it, that story is probably going to be wrong because we're not mind readers. We don't really know what's going on. And if we could see beneath the covers of everybody's brain, I think we would be pretty shocked to realize that their thoughts, their concerns are not that different. I mean, it's their own version of ours. The people who feel truly internally self-confident aren't going out to get Lamborghinis to take a picture with. They aren't going out there and jumping and putting themselves out there in that way because they don't need it.
Right. Right. That's right. That's very, very true. That's very, very true. You know, along those lines, there was a book that was written in the 70s called The Millionaire Next Door. And the study said that 80% of the people who spent money looking like a millionaire were flat broke. And the
Wow.
example that they used was not Lamborghinis, but Mercedes Benzes and BMWs at that time.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, those people who were legitimate millionaires, you couldn't spot them in a lineup because they went to discount stores for their clothes, they bought used cars, and and that really, really struck me. That really, really struck me. And it's the same kind of thing with what you were just talking about with the social media part of it. And I looked at BMWs and Mercedes Benzes very, very differently. You know, before it was like, wow, you must be rich. 8 out of 10 times, dude, you're broke. Right?
Funny, right?
And it's
Scary,
just
funny.
it's the world that we live in. And even it's probably more so today. Shoot, it might be 90% of the people who look like a million dollars are flat broke, you know?
Yeah.
So of course, and that's a whole nother conversation about financial management and financial growth and wealth and all that wealth building and all that kind of stuff. But maybe we can hold that for another day. Um, this has been amazing. This has been amazing for me personally, but hopefully very, very enlightening and insightful in terms of, and I got to tell you this, folks, I pride myself as being a guy that's got it together. And I just realized I ain't got nothing together. I mean, I got all kinds of bullshit plus, jumping around, bouncing around in my head. And I got to do the work.
Yeah.
I got to do the work. And I am going to do the work. I am going to do the work because I don't want to be a fraud.
Yeah.
So, Yossi, do you
Awesome.
have, yeah, thank you. Do you, as we wrap this up, is there anything else you'd like to add or leave with the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't mean to sound anything but what I really feel, which is I do this because it does feel fulfilling to help others. I don't know why. I just know that it does. And if this my method, the way that we went through this resonates with you, you can find me on LinkedIn. And I know John will put my LinkedIn link in the show notes. Reach out. There's a way to schedule time with me from the LinkedIn page. I would love to talk. I'd love to learn more about you and see if there's anything I can do to support or help.
Yep. And yes, these information is in the description. And I mean, we got thank you for uh, sharing your insights and actually using me as an example. Um,
And thank you for
and
wanting to go there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So folks, listen, you got a few things. Sure as heck got a few things out of this that I can take away and work on myself. But if you'd like to get more information and get more detail with Yessi or about Yessi, um, Yessi, you have a website? Can you?
So there's a website for the company name, and honestly, it's not indicative of what I'm doing. I'm
Okay,
working on
okay,
on building one that's my name.com, yosikosowski.com, but
okay,
it's not ready yet. It's got
okay.
like coming soon on it. So that's why
Yeah,
LinkedIn is still the
yeah.
place.
LinkedIn and go to the description. and it's got his contact stuff there. So with that, Yessi, thank you very much for joining us. This was humbling, and this is fascinating, and thank you for doing that to me.
Yeah, with you, and
Okay,
it
okay,
really
good.
was my honor and a gift. So thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Folks, there you have it. Okay. Yosi Kossowsky is just a rock star. Um, Reach out. I love you. God bless you. Thank you again for joining us, and please share this. Okay? And we'll see you next time. Bye.